Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Carrie, Lee, and Greg.
Hello.
Hello.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't run epic long games. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Chris from All Things Good and Nerdy, a proud member of the Good and Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. As you heard, we're going to talk about why you should or should not run epic games.
Epic long games. Every game should be epic.
This is true. Otherwise, you shouldn't be playing the game. Although, Epic Warren would be kind of weird. Be Epic Bunnies. That'd be a little strange.
They are epic.
Although, I guess Usagi Yojimbo is an
They
epic
survive
bunny.
all kinds of things.
So, real quick though, before we get to that, two quick announcements. Is one, HoosierCon registration is live now. So if you guys want to come hang out and game with us, we will be at HoosierCon this year, and registration is live now. We have two games posted on there. One is They Came From Hollywood, which is a MASH game that I'm going to run, and MASH is a Powered by the Apocalypse game in which you are members of the, is it 8099th, I think, Army Surgical Hospital Unit. And I'm also going to run a Lamentations of the Flame Princess game called Worm. So they're both on there, so check those out if you guys want to come out and game with us. And that is the last weekend of March.
Yep, it's Easter weekend.
Yep, and it's a...
Which means you shouldn't be at work.
True story. And it's on the west side of Indy. So if you're in the Indianapolis area or you want to travel to Indianapolis and come have a good time and game, we will be there. I guess the only other thing is we are getting ready to record our actual play of Night Witches. So if you guys don't know what Night Witches is, it is a Russian female fighter pilot game that takes place in World War II, and we're getting ready to start recording that.
The 17th.
Yeah, the couple weekends here. So those episodes will be coming out to you guys here relatively soon, and hopefully that's going to be awesome.
Would you run an epic long game?
I would like to, but my argument is no.
Why?
I guess where I come down on this is when I was, a young lad playing the role-playing games of Dungeons & Dragons back in the day, I had time to do it, and there were less games out there, so I ran longer-running games. And I guess maybe we should define what a longer-running game is. Like, what is an epic long game to you guys? How many sessions?
You ran the Sabbat game for 8 years.
That's fair. I think that goes beyond epic long into a whole new category. But
I don't know. I had a D&D game that I ran every Thursday for 2 years. Okay. I would say that was epic long, but I think epic long does not necessarily have to be that long. I think anything that probably lasts a year.
Okay, but like a year gaming once a month or a year gaming every week? Like how many sessions? If you had to put a number on sessions,
24.
24 sessions?
Maybe a little more than that, but 24 is a good starter.
Okay, right on. Do you agree with that as a benchmark for 24?
It depends on how epic the game is. Okay, so Carrie was running a game out of the Romance trilogy, and she was expecting something about Mary, and what she got was Love at the Time of Cholera. That was pretty epic, as far as romance games go.
We're talking about epic timeline.
Epic long.
Not epic game.
See, but epic and long are two different things.
I know, he said epically long game.
Lord of the Rings would be an example of an epic long game. Does it make sense?
And The Hobbit
that would be epic and long.
Yes.
Yeah. When you start a game, no matter how big or small the scale of the game is, if you run it for 24 sessions, I think if you're still a farmer in the dirt plowing fields 24 games later, you should not play that game. Right? I think we can all agree on that.
That's accurate.
I don't know. Did the turnips have problems this year?
Yeah. Oh, darn it, it's a case of the pox again.
I'm sure there's some table you can roll on.
And is my neighbor encroaching on my farm bot? I think people play Farmville way too long for you to say that you would not want to play that game.
Okay, I don't play Farmville, so I think it's fair to say that I definitely don't want to play that game. But do you see what I'm saying there? Like, I think if you're playing a really long game, it has to grow and build, and I think just because of escalation, it has to become an epic
Sure,
game.
but like genre still has to be accounted for. I wouldn't want to play 24 sessions of the one-on-one romance game. No offense.
Well, no, I don't. Yeah. I think the story would...
You still haven't answered the question. How long is too long?
More gaming is always better gaming.
So you have no problem with a game that has ran more than 24
We could
sessions?
still be playing the Sabat game, and I would still be okay with it.
Wait, what makes it a long game, though?
As opposed to a short game.
Yes.
Well, it depends on the genre.
I don't think
as
that
long
it does. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think as long as everybody's still enjoying themselves, it doesn't really matter how long you run it. Because I've had games that I really enjoyed that lasted 4 sessions, and we've had games that lasted several years that were still enjoyable, and then the reason you switch off is it gets less enjoyable.
So I guess where I agree with that, and I think it becomes, at a practical level, it becomes about keeping the story fresh and moving forward and keeping the plots and the development of the characters interesting and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think that at a fundamental level you can do that very easily, right?
Or logistically, just getting that group to
Yes.
stick together for that long. Because I've had games where people had children, people have moved, and you just don't have the same build anymore.
I agree with that. Then, on top of that, what I have found now is actually pushed me further away from running these big epic long games is that there are so many games out there now that I really like and enjoy that I don't know that I want to be strapped down. Maybe that's the wrong term to use, but I don't want to be tied down to one game where that's the only thing I'm going to run for the next 2 years. I have a bookshelf full of games that I just absolutely love and would love and want to run, but if I'm going to run Lamentations for the next 2 years, that sort of shelves all those games. And while I love Lamentations, but I just don't know that...
Yeah. But at the same time, you don't want to genre hop every single session.
No, I don't disagree with that either, yeah.
Because I know for a while there, with this group and several others that I played with, it got to, well, DMA is going to run this week and maybe next week with this game, and then we're going to switch to something completely diametrically opposed to what we were running, and it's... Changing gears that often can be kind of a pain.
Right.
I will say I have a pro and a con to an epic long game, and my con kind of goes in line with what Greg said. When you get to your gaming table, you want to start game, and when you're starting a new game, you have to re-explain the rules, you have to make characters, and if you're running this game that is lasting the entire time, you don't have to worry about any of that. You get more game time. And I'm not like Lee. I don't like making characters. I don't like learning new rules to a system. I like playing.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think there are some games where, like, if we're going to sit down and make an ace as an eighth character, that's like a double session 0, right? And I think that, like, Powered by the Apocalypse games or Lamentations even, there are several games where character creation is kind of streamlined and you can be off to the races pretty quick. So I get what you're saying, but I think at the same time there are ways to sort of mitigate those things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new games we've been playing where character creation is part of the game. Like the game that I had planned on running today, it's part of the game and it's really enjoyable for me. But it's more of a conversation. I enjoy that. But the thing that I would say, like, I guess that was a pro to having epic long games. My con to having an epic long game, though, would be that I get bored. I've ran so many epic long Dungeons & Dragons games, and my players are like, hey, when are we going to play this character? I want to go do something. And eventually, I just feel like I'm throwing things at the wall, hoping they stick, because I just don't know if I can outdo the last session. And I'm like, can we just play your guys as children? Because your lives are so epic already. And I don't, like...
I think that's a problem with, like, D&D specifically, and games where you level, is, like, if you run a game for 24 sessions... You just, by the nature of experience and the way the characters advance, you have to be fighting these hugely terrible things now. And it's like the Elminster problem. I'm like, why is there adventurers in Forgotten Realms? Elminster should just wave his magic wand and, hey, all the problems are solved because he's so powerful. And especially at like a D&D style game level, the process of combat and playing things becomes so big and so much to manage.
Well, and in some of those epic long games that I've ran, they had relationships, they had homes, they had property. Like you're saying, it's too big to manage. But I'm like, oh yeah, you gotta, like, who's taking care of your property? Like, I know that shouldn't be an issue, but we at least need to have some sort of story thing for that. And then they get really attached, and if you hurt their character or kill their character at that point, it's like personal.
I think it's kind of the whole microplot thing. As long as the microplot is okay, the epic macroplot can be overwhelming. We've had that kill several games over the years, like with the group we played with in high school. When it goes from being a dungeon crawl to leading epic armies against country level, then it's just kind of like, well, this isn't really what I signed up for.
But doesn't the game sort of have to do that, though?
Depends on the story.
Because, like, you can only be a murder hobo for so long before it's like, hey, I know that you, Conan, sir, are the, slayer of monsters and all this kind of stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if you were just the king and nobody would, like, be jerks anymore because they know you will come chop their head off? And I think it kind of has to become that, and that's where I guess maybe the game becomes stale, or you have to go at it knowing that you have to shift gears into that.
I don't think it's stale, it's just so hard to prep.
Well, I'll look back to the Chronicle game that Kurt ran for us for several years. We started out as young murder hobos going through and doing our thing, and as we went through it, eventually we did get to the, epic kind of thing. That was the wrap-up of the epic campaign, though. That wasn't... we didn't keep going after that.
Okay.
I'm fine with having an endpoint. I'm not saying let the game go on continuously. If the story arc is complete, the story arc's complete, carry on with something else.
Right. In that game being an example, I had a lot of fun in that game, but it felt like the story arcs of different characters should have ended at different times. In a way, you get so attached to characters, and both as the player and as the game master, right? And there was I know Kurt has said there was a hesitancy for him to sort of kill my character, even though my story arc had come and went and gone, and I had kind of walked myself into this sacrificial moment in a way, and I loved that character, and I would have been perfectly okay with him dying to save friends and loved ones and whatever, but almost at a meta level, there was some push to not have that happen. Does it make sense?
It does make sense to an extent,
and
but
I think it just that kind of creates this staleness.
You
almost
just can't be afraid to kill characters.
Well, that's true. We talked about that before, but
I'm pretty sure that creating a new character and then trying to fill your old character's shoes is grist for good role playing.
Well, but that's also a problem too. Is when your old character does die, and then you have this new guy that shows up, and it's like, hey, why are you here? I don't know. I'm the replacement, in the cast.
So you guys met so many people. It could have easily been another neighboring lord's son. There's just so many. Like, I don't think that's artificial at all. In fact, I think it's weird that parties don't automatically grow and have followers sometimes.
Well, I also don't have a problem with that artificialness sometimes, because part of the conceit of us playing this game is that everyone is involved. And if we have to do some hand waving to say, hey, why's your character here? Well, I don't know. You're supposed to be, and we're all buddies. I fell through
a hole in the plot.
Hurrah. Right? I get it. There are episodes and TV shows that we watch where like, that was lame, but I really like that character. He's pretty cool now. It's okay.
I don't know that we're arguing the right thing.
Initially, in my mind, what I was initially advocating for was that you should run like a medium length game where it's like a 8 to 12 session kind of a thing. Because I feel like, at least at this stage of my life with work and life and blah, blah, whatever, real world commitments, that I feel like in an 8 to 12 session game that you can sort of hit all those high points for the most part and have a couple different character story arcs that come to completion. And then you can close it off and not have to worry about staleness or, man, I really want to play this other game, or how do we get new characters back involved in the game after these ones have died off and whatever. I also think that logistically, in terms of trying to get people together, it's easier to have that style of game happen.
It is a good point. However, I think as long as the story would support the game, there's no reason to stop the game.
The characters can be part of more than one story.
Yeah, but then there becomes a problem of... I think it's like this, if you have, let's say we have a game, right, and you bring a character back that is 12th level or whatever, right, and then Carrie and Greg make 12th level characters as well. There's sort of this back history that you're going to have that I feel like, I don't know, it's almost cheating the other players out of it a little bit.
Right, but in the D&D sense, if they have 3/4 of the player's handbook dedicated to all these awesome powers that you can't use until you're level 16 and you're always starting off as level 1 characters, that sucks. If you don't have an epic log game, you never get to use those powers.
We've had games where we start off as epic characters before. I've done that before. But there's this thing in DCC Dungeon Crawl Classics, right, where they have this thing. It's called the funnel, okay? And at the top of the funnel is all your first level characters, right? And the bottom of the funnel is all your 20th level characters. And it's the way the game is sort of designed is it's just inherently you're going to have 8 gajillion first level characters and only 1 20th level character.
But you are going to have one.
Yeah, I've had one before, but we also don't run those style of games with levels anymore, or very often. So I don't know that it's a fair comparison to say that. It seems like the idea of an epic long game is really cool, but the practicality of it is not. That's where a lot of this comes from my perspective, is that I would like to run those games and it would be cool, but in reality, it never really comes together. So then why not set off with the intention of running a shorter or a midterm length game, and then if something else develops, that's great. But I think that when you go at planning a game out, that this is going to run 24 sessions, right? And I'm going to, in the first 6 sessions, I'm setting up all this stuff to pay off in session 18 and 20.
The adventurers are not going to bite, and you're going to go on a totally different adventure.
But even if that doesn't happen, though, if they do bite on it, the chances of you actually getting to session 20 are pretty slim. With the idea that the game master is supposed to be there to have fun too, if I'm setting up all this stuff that's never going to pay off, that's not fun.
What if the story's not based on the characters but a place?
I don't know. Like
a city that the Spitaliers and Degenesis have to defend for the next three ages.
I think it's a different style of game, though.
You know, it's still epic long.
Well, assuming that but you still have to maintain the same thing for 24 sessions. And I think practically
But you never have to change scope.
But what I'm saying, though, is the real world side of trying to get that game to go that long is where things are going to fail. That's why I think you shouldn't do those things, because it's just so hard. Now, if we were all 16 again and didn't have anything to do other than mow grass and go to school, sure, it'd probably be pretty easy to do that.
At 16, I wasn't allowed to mow grass.
Are you serious?
She's not allowed to mow the grass now.
Hey, I can operate a fryer and a grill.
She broke the mower.
Well, there you go. But I think when your real world commitments are much less, it's way easy to do that stuff. But now I think that I would rather develop a game that I know I have at least like a 70 to 80% chance of bringing to completion and drawing those stories to a close, as opposed to running a game that I have like a 40% chance of doing that. Now, the payoff is way bigger in an epic game, like in those long-running games where you have all these relationships and all the stuff that comes out and comes to fruition. But more often than not, I would think that just doesn't happen.
Now, over the years, out of the epically long games you've played, how many of them were uninterrupted? Because looking back, again, looking at the Chronicle,
That's me flipping Greg off.
We had that game lasted, 4 years?
Thereabouts, yeah.
We played the Firefly game in between. We played a lot of Space 1889. There was some old D&D in there. It just depends. We didn't do the epic game nonstop.
Right.
It was broken up into, I don't necessarily want to say like seasons, but that's kind of how it ran.
Right.
And I think there is a point to the game getting stale if you just run the same damn thing over and over. Mm-hmm. However, if you do break it up, you can still have the epic game of, okay, man, we've been doing this thing for years and the characters have development and the arcs continue, but we get a little bit of a palate cleanser in between now and then.
And part of the benefit to having 4 people around a table is that you have 4 different voices, and perhaps some of them are not great at running long epic games, but some of them are.
Right, that's fair too. I thought you were going to mention the Sabat game in that. But
I wasn't, but it would be true there.
Yeah, I was like, here it comes. Anytime now. Come on.
I'm pretty sure the Orpheus game might actually be longer running now, since you keep promising to run it.
Well, the difference there, though, is that we've had that game start and stop several times with different characters, whereas the Sabat game ran for 8 years. And there were periods where we would play that game for like 6 or 8 months at a time, and then we would take a break, similar to what Greg was talking about with with Kurt's Chronicle game. And maybe that is the right way to do that. And
kind of like elders periodically wandering off to sleep for a while.
Right. I'm not sure if I planned that as several mid-length games that just happen to work out and go together.
Game?
Yeah.
I thought that was just an accident. Like, hey, I need to do something, and this is what we're going to do. And then every time we didn't know what to do, we just figured we'd go beat up a bunch of people
Well-
in the SWAT game.
So initially, that game was kind of weird because initially I made that game to be, hey, we play all these vampire games and there's all these crazy cool powers that we never get and we never touch on and use. And I was like, what if we just had a game where you guys pick whatever you want to make and just go hog wild and go crazy, right? And I think a Sabbat game sort of suits that, right? And that was the initial intention of that game.
Also,
rolled
you did it
randomly.
twice.
Twice.
Yeah, you did our what's the thing called? Hammering? Shoveling. You did it twice.
Oh, that's because we started off with the Requiem, and then I realized I don't like New
No,
World
the
of
I'm
Darkness.
pretty sure the Requiem came like afterwards. Like we played this game for a couple years, and then Requiem came out, and we switched it over, and then we decided we didn't like it, so we switched it back.
Okay, that may be true. I remember there being like, oh, no, I don't like Requiem.
James doesn't like epic long games because he can't remember what the last session was.
This may be true. This may be true. I don't know. I think in terms of the Sabbat game, I think that was a game that we made to sort of fill in the gaps of other games, and then it just always filled the gap.
It was also the one that we used whenever we had a new player because shoveling was just fun.
Yeah, it's true. It was easy to.
It's like, hey, I have some friends coming over. Oh, let's shovel them. Good idea.
Right.
Oh, they never came back.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, shoveling is a tradition in the Sabbat where they just randomly pick people, dig graves, bury them, embrace them, and make them dig their way out and kind of torment them, I guess, in a way. Was that a dick move of us or no?
No, we had fun.
Fair enough.
Okay, so back to kind of the topic at hand. I thought of something, and I think maybe the problem is we shouldn't have epic long games with our group because we have 4, 5, 6 rotating GMs that all have ideas, all want to run something.
I didn't think about that.
But like at my brother's house, or when I hang out with Royal, or when I ran the online game with them and a couple of their friends, that was about the only time we were in a game. And we didn't want to learn a new game. We wanted to play the game that we had cool memories from. Like, that's what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there was always a rotating cast, but the GM in the game was always the same. Because, like, same thing happens to my brother's house. Some people can make it, some people can't. Why have a new game or be so dependent on those characters? Let's have this epic long game where we can all play and all work our way towards that same storyline, regardless of who's here today.
So do you think that when I see things that people discuss online, there's a lot of people that talk about they don't have enough game masters. There's only one game master in their group. Do you think the fact that we have 6, 7, 8 game masters around our table, depending on who's there,
Yes, I
that
do.
contributes to it?
A lot. And I think that we had more epic games before we had more comfortable game masters.
Oh, you're right. I guess because as time has gone by, you guys.
And I don't really think it was availability of game either. I mean, we have more games now, but you had a pretty substantial cabinet at the time, but I wasn't going to run for you guys. I wasn't ready to do that.
Lacey just ran her first game like less than 2 years ago.
That's not true. Because she ran one when Lacey and James lived in Danville
Oh.
with the Wizard Tower.
Oh, that's right.
The
I forgot
GURPS
about
game,
that one.
and-
But still, she doesn't normally run.
Yeah, she ran a Discworld book with the GURPS Lite.
The Discworld book I picked up when I was stationed in Mississippi, or
And one of them the other one, I think, came from Tommy, I think, yeah.
no, I got both of them down there. I thought those burned up when his house went.
No, they're in the basement. They're on the bookshelf down here. So,
I missed that game shop.
But I think you're right. Like, as time has gone by, because we've had the same group together now, more or less, for a long time. And I don't know that we've intentionally tried to develop anybody as a game master or whatever. But
But we've all made that goal independently because we feel like we're letting everybody down. Like, we could tell for a while that you just did not want to run.
Yeah.
You were like, I'd rather play, and everybody wants to play. It's kind of like, hey, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine
Right.
later.
Right. I also think that as time goes by and you develop more as a player, there are stories that you want to tell. And I've always said that you run the games that you want to play, right? Because no one else will run that game for you because it's in your head, not, you know what I mean? And as time goes by and you get more and more comfortable with mechanics and gaming and the group, that it just is sort of the normal progression, I guess, if your group stays together. So, right on. So is there a consensus? Should we not run Epic Games anymore?
No, we still totally should.
Yeah.
Maybe not every game should be very, very long.
Let's see. I have more non-epic games planned and ready to go right now than I do epic games because I don't have the time or the desire to run an epic game, but I still want to run games.
We still want to play epic games.
Go play by yourself.
We still want to play Orpheus.
Yeah.
We still want to play Dust. I still want to play Genesis.
Dust isn't epic yet.
But it was
Not
going
in
to be.
length.
On Ozo, he promised us a second chapter, and we were all about it. We're getting ready to go into London.
This
Yeah,
is
but it's
true.
only going to last for 2 more years. I mean, we all know how that story ends. Just kidding. Never mind.
World War II?
Okay, it's that game. It doesn't end, does it?
No, because it's much more complicated world. So there are other, I guess, fictitious things that happen in the world to make the world go longer and whatever. So
I don't think we came to a consensus.
I don't know, because I felt very kind of conflicted about it, and Kurt was in the back of my mind when I thought about this, because when he sits down to plan out a game, it just seems like that's how he lays out his games in his mind. Not that that's right or wrong. That's just the way he goes, his process or whatever. And I thought, when I do it, I kind of try to come at things with this short to midterm length game, and it changes how I put things together, I guess. And I don't know. It seemed like there was a lot of work that didn't pay off as often as you would like it to, I guess.
Like I said, it always comes back to the story. Mm-hmm. There are times when absolutely doing it because I'm kind of more along the Kurt line of thinking of things. I'd rather have all of my notes and everything else ready before I start, and at least an idea of where I want things to go long term and short term. Mm-hmm.
I still think it depends a great deal on the game.
Well, and if everybody's happy with the game, you don't necessarily want to throw a wrench and make everybody unhappy.
Right. What do you mean you think it depends on the game?
Well, I think Genesis screams long, epic game. D&D screams long, epic game. Dread, not so much.
Well, Dread is designed as a one-shot. There's not even, you can't... that's a poor example. But do you think that's because of content? Because when you look at, D&D or Genesis or World of Darkness, there's all this stuff, right? Gazillion pages worth of stuff.
It's just 3 books.
What?
But it's just 3
books.
books.
Yeah, sure. Good story. But when you look at games like Apocalypse World or any of that string of games in that line, there's not as much there in terms of the body of game materials. Do you think that contributes to that?
I don't know. The Unisystem's got 5 different core books.
Unisystem.
Of different levels.
Oh, but I think that you could run that sort of lends itself in the same way to, maybe not All Flesh because it's a zombie game, right? But I think Conspiracy X and Witchcraft and Armageddon, they all lend themselves to longer running games because there's all that stuff there for
it. It never changes scope, though, does it?
Yeah, actually does. They build in terms of how much power the characters have.
No, I got that. But you don't change scope. You make a Con X character, you're going to play just a Con X game. You make the Witchcraft character, you're only going to play that game. When you make an All Flesh character, you're only going to play All Flesh. You're not going to move up to Con X.
They talk about how they actually can kind of maybe. All Flesh is a bad example because you're if the zombie apocalypse has happened.
Maybe it's like a localized event. Right. A localized apocalypse.
You could transition from that to a Con X game, and they actually do kind of scale up because they talk about in the Con X book and in each of them, going down 1 power level or up 1 power level. They kind of mention how that would work and how you would fit those characters in there and how you would do that. So it kind of does. And I mean, in terms of scope and size, Armageddon is actually about the end of. I don't think it gets any bigger than Armageddon.
Perhaps not.
So, the end of all things. I don't think there is anything larger.
Depends on if you're talking about world level or universe level.
It's like everything. It's at a metaphysical level.
That's problematic.
So, angels and demons and higher powers and whatnot. So
are you going to run epic long games still?
Not intentionally.
Okay. Are you?
Can you do it accidentally?
I mean, if the story takes me there, yeah, sure.
Are you going to run epic long games?
I get in trouble after 3 sessions.
Okay. I will still run epic long games, but only for a certain group. I will not be bringing any epic long games to this gaming table.
Why is that?
Because there's so many of us.
That's fair.
Because she's already bringing epic games to other tables.
Once I read the other book that I'm never going to read, I will run an epic long game.
What is that?
Clockwork.
I thought that's what it was going to be. So I don't know. I think I would like to, and doing what I've done with 7th Sea and a couple of the other games that we have, running them as like a mid-length game, and then stringing those together.
7C needs to be epic. It doesn't need to be mid-length.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
It's something everybody loves. That's the other thing. What if the game I'm running, somebody in the group doesn't like? Like, what if someone's running 40K? Epic level 40K.
epic long 40K. The lethality of 40K is kind of high for epic. It's like, well, we've been playing this game for 3 years. We're all on our 7th character now, but actually, Pendragon is I don't think you guys ever played that, but actually that game, you play descendants. Like, part of the idea of the game is that as you play, you are supposed to have heirs so that you can get old, retire, and take over those heirs.
Also, your Dragonlance game is supposed to be epic.
Well, Dragonlance by definition is epic.
That's true. It has to be.
There's that.
The war of, especially if you're running during like the War of the Lance or the Chaos War. And those are really, there's no point in running any other time period, to be honest.
Didn't you run
Well,
a
Cataclysm would be fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's still epic though.
That's kind of the same thing I said with the story that takes place around a city, though, except instead of the characters just aren't hereditarily related, they're organizationally related.
Oh, like the Pendragon thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be cool and fun to do. Your character wouldn't be suitable to play in the trenches anymore, so now that they've ascended in rank and they're like at a command level, and you make a new character who's in the gutter with all the other plebs.
Yeah, that's actually kind of how the last D&D game I ran turned out.
Yeah.
It was the trading company one where they were on ships and going all about the place, and the initial cast leveled up to the point where they all got their own ships, so we just started over with...
Yeah. Yeah, because if you start the East India Trading Company, like, the guy who's in charge of it isn't actually out on a boat anymore.
Yeah.
He's sitting behind a desk somewhere drinking wine and some crumpet or something. I don't know. Whatever.
out of a crumpet?
Wine out of a crumpet? That would be a little weird. So,
Might be soggy.
true story. True story. Well, I don't know that we had any kind of consensus here at all. It's something I thought I would brainstorm about and just see what you guys thought, because, I don't know, I have all these weird things that roll around in my head, and I'm like, man, I wonder if it's just me that feels this way or not. So, I don't know. Yeah, so I guess, let us know. Do you guys still run epic long games? And if you do, like, how long have you been gaming, and how well does your gaming group stay together? I'd be interested to see how many GMs you have at your table, because I think that's actually a big contributing factor.
There's the epic game that has lasted from the people moving and they fly to see each other. I saw that the other day. I'll find it for you.
Okay, cool.
Post it on the page.
I saw something else where there was a game that was lasted 40 years or something, and it was still the same characters or something.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, nothing seems more boring to me than that, because I like to watch other movies than Lord of the Rings. But I mean, if that's how you find your fun,
But if you
then
read
that's
the
great
whole
for you.
article, they did, if I remember reading it correctly, they did break it up, and it wasn't 40 years straight. It was, we started here, we had a bunch of other stuff in the middle, and we still would occasionally go back and...
That's fair. That's
Like
fair.
the Sabat game,
Right on.
but 5 times longer.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. I guess just let us know what you guys think. Do you guys still run epic games, and how often do you start them and not bring them to fruition? I guess is the real question. I guess I'm also asking this because of the Dracula dossier. I have a strong desire to run the Dracula dossier, and one of our Patreon backers, Todd, has been talking to me about it, and he has ran it successfully. And then the gaming group asked him to run it again. That's how good it was. So he
he's
split the
doing
group
it
in
twice.
half. Yeah. But the Dracula dossier is so big, and there's so much there, that you could run that game several times and never have the same game or the same even NPCs involved in the game, except for Dracula, obviously, because he's Dracula. There's a couple things that have to be there for it to be the Dracula dossier. But,
He is the problem you're setting about to solve.
right. So, yeah, I guess just let us know what you guys think. Drop us a line on Twitter or on Facebook, or you can email me at James@JustOneMoreFace. We'll give you guys a shout out, because I'm kind of curious to see what has worked for you guys and what doesn't work, and maybe it's the style of games that we're running at our table that has changed things as time has gone by, I guess. So let us know what you think. Other than that, I think that'll do it for us this week. So, quick Gunny Geek promo for All Things Good and Nerdy, episode 301. That's a lot of episodes. This week kicks off the news that the reboot is being rebooted. Avengers Infinity War is moved up a week, which is super awesome. Chrono Trigger is finally coming to the PC. Did not know that. Do you remember that game?
I've got the Japanese version.
That was a wicked cool game back in the day. That's awesome. So anyway, Chrono Trigger is finally coming to the PC, and Ryan Otley will be the new artist for The Amazing Spider-Man. After a few weeks' delay, the crew is finally able to have a spoiler-full discussion about the Black Panther to wrap up the show. So I'm not going to listen to that because I want to see the Black Panther without any spoilers. But check that out. It's All Things Good and Nerdy, episode 301, and you can find them on the Gun and Geek Network. As always, thanks for hanging out with us, and you can support us on our Patreon or find us on justonemorefix.com, and I guess we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at Incompetech.com. You can support us at Patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.